On this week's podcast, Timmy and I talk about a potential Supreme Court case. And what makes this unique is I'd be happy with either outcome on this week's episode of Bald, Blind, and Buddies.
Bald, Blind, and Buddies.
Timmy C, we're back on a Sunday afternoon recording. Everything's well in the world as it should be. How are you, my blind-ass friend?
I'm good. I'm in the western branch of Bald, Blind, and Buddies, the citadel of sensibility, the redoubt of rationality.
Which happens to be up the street from the University of Wisconsin at Madison.
Well, we need an outpost, a forward outpost, John.
Well, what was it when you were out at your sister's? I mean, you're in Montana and Oregon, so that's got to be the western branch. Do you just use it twice?
Yeah. It's like the World Wide Web, WW. Yeah.
Right. By the way, do you believe it's 25 years coming up since September 11th? Not to
goodness.
Be a downer, but I just saw some reminders about anniversary stuff coming up.
Crazy.
And I was like, good Lord. 25 years, which tells you, by the way, we're 50. 25 years went by pretty quickly. We're going to be 75 in about 2 weeks.
Yep.
So you gotta enjoy it. It's like David Burkhoff said. He said, I only have 30 years left on this planet. I got to make the most of them. I can't deal with negativity. Remember?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, the trivia question this week is about David Burkhoff, or tangentially about David Burkhoff. Anything new? How's your weekend?
It's good. Paul is off canoeing in upper Wisconsin with the Boy Scouts, so that'll be fun. He's eating beef jerky and granola bars all week. So
the staples of a young, growing man's body.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
I'm like, he can handle a little male nutrition for a couple days.
Right. Katie is always like, we just got back from Katie's cousin has this beautiful, absolutely perfect lake house up in Lake Wallenpaupack, which is one of the largest lakes in Pennsylvania. I think it's the largest man-made lake. That's their claim to fame in Pennsylvania. It's like 13 miles long. And they let us use it, and they never want anything. So I get him a bottle of bourbon. I send him whatever he wants from Westchester Nuts, and we send him a gift card. And while we're up there, Katie's like, oh, you guys shouldn't be eating this. And I'm like, we're here for 3 days. Just let them eat Doritos. Who cares? Right? I mean, right? That's a fight for your cardiologist in 25 years. Don't worry about it right now while we're on vacation.
Oh, absolutely.
So. And I love, we had that episode about the water, and I am drawn to the water, but given the choice, and again, these are distinctly first world problems, but I would always do a lake house. And this lake house they have is absolutely perfect because it's like you just go up, you enjoy yourself. They got this beautiful dock. It's just, it's phenomenal. And we use it. We don't do anything, I joke with my boss, we don't do anything for 48 weeks. And then literally as soon as swim season ends for Molly, it's usually like the second week of July to like August 15th. Mm-hmm. We jam in every vacation. I think we have 2 scheduled next year. We're going back to Alaska, we think, and we're going to go to the beach, of course. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You been doing anything fun or no?
That's it. Just resettling from getting back from Oregon, that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, how was that? How was that?
It was nice. Yeah,
that's the land of fruits and nuts for you, buddy.
Yeah,
Oregon is about as liberal as it can get, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. There's some joke on the internet, and I'm going to botch it, but it's like they talk about the paradise that is communism, and somebody responds, they have it. It's called Portland. That's got to be. It's funny to me that your sister lives in that place and you live in a borderline bluish reddish state. That's your state can go either way.
Yeah, and for the most part, we were grown up enough to avoid difficult topics and let things lie. So
I mean, that's part of the. One of my favorite expressions somebody told me. You're an adult when you understand this expression, which is show up, put up, and shut up.
Yeah, and
I was like, yeah. That totally makes sense. The British are onto something. So a friend of mine, Nick, who is a regular listener, and I appreciate all 14 of you that listen to us with some of your regularity. Mike just made a donation. Thank you very much. That being said, he has asked me to plug what's called the Turk's Head Trail. So in downtown Westchester, it's a very cool sort of college town. They filmed that show Tires here and so forth. And there was an old railroad that ran through town and has since been done away with it. For years, they've been trying to bring it back and so forth. And there's a trail that runs along it, and it goes from downtown Westchester basically to Cheney University. And why Cheney University might strike a chord is it was the first historically black college and university, Cheney University was. Ed Bradley, actually, the famous correspondent from 60 Minutes, he went to Cheney. So he's perhaps the most famous, and I'm sure there's others out there, but he just jumps to mind. So it's an opportunity to get people excited about the Turk's Head Trail and put some money into it. It needs a little TLC. It's about 5 miles long, and he asked me to plug it on the podcast, and I thought of no better person and no better idea than, let's bring Mother Nature back, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah. Something we all
anything to get these people off of their cell phones, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, Timmy, in honor of David Burkhoff, by the way, our trivia question this week, he actually broke the world record in the 100-meter backstroke 3 times, twice in the same day. So I think what happened was he broke the world record in the qualifying and then broke it again in the finals in 1988. I think it was August of 1988. He broke the world record 3 times. It's since been broken a number of times. It was held most recently by Ryan Murphy, the last American to hold it. Who is the current holder of the world record in the 100-meter backstroke? It's not an American, by the way. So
okay,
this is in honor of David Burkhoff. It's just incredible how much, and the fellow who holds it, just to put it in perspective, is 6'6". David is listed at best at 5'10". Yeah. According to his Wikipedia page, it says he's 5'9". So I don't care. That's almost giving up a foot in length. I mean, that's just, it speaks to how unbelievable an athlete and how big of a heart David must have had, right? Or does have.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, Timmy, what any updates on the listeners, and then we'll get into this week's topic.
Yeah, well, so teasing some upcoming guests, we will have someone who's declared their candidacy for the 2028 presidential election on.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
This is a surprise to me too, folks.
Yeah.
FYI. Yeah.
And you folks may remember our chat with the future. Graham is going to return to our podcast at some point.
Very cool.
And hopefully he's going to talk with us about the Democratic Socialists of America. We think that'll be the topic, but we'll see.
That we're holding for that's going to be next week, I think, is that Zakaria article. I think that's what we'll talk about, because where does the proper balance between culture and economics, for Democrats and for Republicans as well. What happens post-Trump? I think that's what we'll talk about next week.
Yeah.
But let me just set the stage. There's a New York Times reporter, and again, don't kill the messenger, Timmy. Adam Liptak is his name. He's a very well-known chief legal correspondent for the New York Times, and he hosts what's called The Docket, which is a podcast. And he writes this week, byline August 6th, the next great First Amendment battleground is just 6 inches high and is attached to about 1 million motor vehicles in Virginia alone. It is the vanity license plates, and the courts are splintered over whether and how states can censor the messages the plates convey. So a couple things I want to set right away. In order to be heard by the Supreme Court, it has to grant what's called cert. So of the 9 justices, 4 have to vote, yes, I want to hear this case. That's not an assurance that it's going to go one way or the other, but just to hear the case, it has to have an enormous political or constitutional issue. I would dare say I think the Supreme Court's going to take this, and part of the reason is twofold. Go ahead.
Let's back up. So a person in Virginia had a license plate which says FTP &sign ATF.
And ATF,
yeah. And it was printed by Virginia without controversy until somebody reported it, and then Virginia is claiming that it's government speech somehow, perhaps, or it deserves censorship, and that's the legal question.
Well,
right?
let's tell everybody what FTP is. TP stands for the police. F is exactly what you think it is, and ATF is alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
Can I insert something here though?
Yeah, of course.
So I am so nerdy. You folks tech folks may remember this. I thought it was file transfer protocol, FTP. I'm like, what is wrong with file?
And I suppose he probably could have claimed that, right?
Right.
Yeah. The case, it involves a guy named Curtis Watley, who paid Virginia $10 in 2023 for a personalized license plate. He had 7 characters to work with, and he sought to convey a statement, quote, expressing my opinion on the current state of policing in this country, as he would later say in a lawsuit. So, a couple things I want to establish. The Supreme Court has to grant cert. 4 people have to vote for it. Usually the Supreme Court grants cert, A, when there's a major constitutional issue that has to be decided, and secondarily, if the circuit courts are split. So the way in which the federal court system works is there's 94 federal courts, 1 in each state, and then they're split up by population. So, of course, California is going to have a heck of a lot more than Wyoming, right? But every state has at least 1. So there's 50, that's 1 in each state, and then 44 are split based on population. Then there are 12 circuit courts. Those are basically the appellate courts. And for all but a very small number of cases, they're basically the courts of final resort, because the Supreme Court typically grants cert in about 60 to historically 100, but somewhere between, say, 50 and 100 cases. It's not uncommon that they'll hear, say, 60 cases a year. So the probability of making it to the Supreme Court to even being heard is statistically near impossible. So what happens in the circuit courts, or the appellate courts, the 12 appellate courts, and they're divided up by regions, the ninth being the biggest, California, Hawaii, Oregon, Washington State, and so forth. It's also generally considered to be liberal. The fourth circuit court of appeals, or the fifth as well, are generally considered to be more conservative. That being said, the Supreme Court will take it if there's a split between the circuit courts, the appellate courts, which there is in this case, because the question is, what is the proper boundaries between government speech and First Amendment protections for citizens? And before I get into even being a bigger nerd, why don't you take it from here, Timmy? Anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, so I'm a psychiatrist by day, and so I thought about this at a personal level. So this guy spent his money. Somebody typed the letters into a machine and printed out his license plate. He goes on with his life, and then somebody sees the plate, has nothing better to do than to remember it and report it anonymously to create this controversy. So somebody who's this is all about someone's feelings, John, are driving this.
What if it was a cop? What if it was a cop?
Yeah, it could be a cop.
I mean, cops deserve, I think, a certain level of deference. They put themselves in harm's way. I understand that's part of the job description, but people in the military, people in uniform, first responders, I think they deserve a certain level of deference. So let's assume it's a cop.
Well, also though, right? if you're gonna complain about this or contend against somebody's speech, I think we should eliminate anonymous reporting.
Oh, 100%.
So whoever 100%. should stand up, man. Like if you don't like
put your name behind
put your name behind it, because I think that brings out the worst of us.
So not that this is even relevant to it, but in line with that. So a couple of years ago, now with cell phones and instant technology and information at your fingertips, people were calling in on golfers. So someone was watching the Masters and called in and reported that Tiger Woods improved his lie through no fault of his own. It was a long story. He dropped the ball, but by virtue of dropping it to the left as opposed to the right, it improved his lie and blah, blah, blah. So the PGA and the USGA have basically said, we're no longer taking that, because people were calling in all the time. And this just happened where a guy named Bryson DeChambeau got a 2-stroke penalty. I'm not a big Bryson DeChambeau fan, so I'm okay with it. But somebody did point out, they're like, look, the guy's on TV all the time, so everybody's watching every shot. If you're the number 62 golfer in the world, you're still a pretty goddamn good golfer, but you're not on TV all the time, right? So to that point, I think that people, particularly with technology now, have to put some stake in the game, some, chips on the table, put your name behind it.
Yeah. And why couldn't Virginia say, you know what we've written, like get on with it, citizen. Like they didn't have to retract it.
No, of course not. But again, I also think one of the things that people have, so your issue is this anonymous person calling in and bitching about this, and then Virginia sort of kowtowing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's still an important issue and question, but it started because somebody took the time to narc on a fellow citizen.
Right. But I mean, I think this case to me is a 5-4 issue. I can see legitimately both sides. But I agree with you. Grow up. Why did this person have to do it anonymously?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I also, one of the things that I tell people all the time is I think there's a foundational misunderstanding of what the First Amendment's about, because people always cry censorship about X, Y, and Z. So the example I always say is, look, if a country music station in Nashville, Tennessee decides not to play rap music, that's not censorship. That's a business decision, right? They're in a for-profit industry. What the First Amendment deals with exclusively is the relationship between its citizenry and its government, what the government can do. And they cannot engage in what's called prior restraint, which is a very fancy way of saying censorship, right? So there's a conflating of, well, isn't this wrong because Citibank did X, Y, and Z, or this company? No, there's no First Amendment violations here. It's whether or not the government has violated its citizens' rights, and that's the key thing. So before I get into some of my other concerns about this case, I think it needs to be decided, because the Supreme Court has not really specifically answered this issue as to what needed to be done, right? is what is the proper line? Does the government have to endorse? And I'll give you some examples of why I don't necessarily. And I tend to agree with the decision in 2015, which dealt with the Sons of the Confederate Army. The state of Texas had its vanity plates, and they had all sorts of different things, God bless Texas, fight terrorism, I'd rather be golfing, blah, blah, blah. The vote in the case, Walker versus Sons of Confederate Veterans, was 5-4. Justice Stephen Breyer wrote the majority opinion, joined by the court's, at the time, other 3 liberal members, and Justice Clarence Thomas. I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to see, how do you feel? Let's assume the government takes Whatley's case. Is this First Amendment protected free speech, or does the state have the right to say, no, we're not going to allow that on the license plate?
Well, as I understand it, I think there's at least 2 questions. One, is it government speech? And if it's government speech, the government can say whatever the heck it wants. Right. And then the second question is, well, if it is, a citizen's speech, is there enough of a threshold to censor it, right? And they do censor license plates all the time, like lascivious ones that are, blatant profanity, etc. So I think the question is, is it First Amendment strict scrutiny or whatever they call it?
And they usually on these cases will have the highest level of analysis, which is called strict scrutiny. It's not like you got to come up with a real strong argument for us to restrict speech.
Yeah.
The running into a crowded movie theater and yelling fire, the proverbial historical one everybody knows, but this is right up. And as you know, Timmy, my feeling is in all but a handful of cases, I believe the First Amendment is sacrosanct, and that has become very controversial. I'll give you an example in a minute. But this might be one where I actually can see the government's argument.
Yeah, and there's this category. I don't know if I was going to ask you this. From a legal standpoint, does it matter? So I agree that individuals have freedom of speech and press, etc. But there's this category that I started calling facilitated speech. Right? I can write FTP on my garage door, right? But nobody has to do that for me. So Virginia had to carry out an act which essentially amplifies his speech, right? This happens, you're like, I want this on my child's birthday cake or my wedding cake, and somebody has to do it for you, or a social media platform has to amplify your speech. Is there a difference between permitting it and amplifying it in a legal sense?
No, the government, and again, all these things, at the end of the day, these are still works in progress. The Constitution, and the genius behind it is that it is very much open to debate and construction and what have you, and common sense. The government basically categorizes speech. There's pure speech, there's speech plus content, which is, they have banners, they have all these sorts of things. And there's, seditious speech and there's all sorts of categories of individual speech. So you putting FTP onto your garage is protected. Mm-hmm. I see what you're saying. And I'm not 100% sure on this as to whether or not there's a differentiation between the two, but I think this is something that needs to be judged, which is, where does the liability, for instance, social media companies come in, right? Do they have liability for what people post on their website? What the state of Virginia, and why I see this as, again, if it goes 5-4 either way, I'm okay with it, or even 6. You know what I'm saying? It's not as black and white as a 9-0. Because one of the examples I use is, what if neo-Nazis, or what if somebody wanted to say praise Hitler, or, Jews deserve to die, or fill in the blank, some crazy ass thing, KKK thing, right? Does the government have an obligation to print that? And the answer would obviously be no for most people. Well, where is the line? And right. Again, it's kind of like what you talk about with transgender. Not that everything comes back to that, but you've always said, look, there's a handful of cases in a state the size of Wisconsin. You said there's probably 5 or 6 cases, right, that are edge cases. Mm-hmm. Those are where the rubber meets the road, and you have to decide. Do I think that transgender is overblown, and all of a sudden, why are there 40 transgender people for every 1,000 in Los Angeles, and there's 1 in the entire state of Wyoming, right? Right. I see that logically. I don't know where the line should be drawn, and I suppose that's why the Supreme Court's going to take this case. What makes me upset, however, is I'm pretty sure they're going to take this case, not for the reasons that they're going to claim, which is, we have to decide this, which is probably true, but 2 things can be true at the same time. I'm also convinced that they're taking this case because Justice Stephen Breyer is now ex-Justice Stephen Breyer. The makeup of the court has changed, and the person who wrote the dissent, a very strong dissent, is none other than Sam Alito, who, for better or for worse, I have absolutely no respect for better or for worse. If you're flying the American flag upside down and you are still sitting on as a member of the United States Supreme Court, something's wrong.
Is that a high crime or misdemeanor, John?
No, but again, you think Bill Clinton should have resigned for his behavior in the White House. If you want to make that argument to me in 1998, I'll agree to you. I don't think it's a high crime or misdemeanor, and I certainly don't think it's anybody's business. But if you think that rises to the level of, geez, I should probably get out of here with my dignity intact, yeah, I can stomach that argument.
Well, that was perjury. That was perjury, John, to be fair.
Get the hell out of here, Timmy. I mean, come on.
Perjury about an issue which, may have been his own business. But
all right, if you're going to make that argument, fine, I'll give you that. All right, if it's perjury that you really went after, but do you think that this thing would have had a half-life of 10 seconds if it didn't involve sex with an intern? Come on. You understand what I'm saying, though, Timmy, right? Which is the makeup of the court has changed. I think Alito is nothing more than a politician. I think he's brilliant. I think he deserves to be on the Supreme Court.
His dissent was hilarious.
Yeah, in dissent. Yeah, read what he says. You have.
Well, I don't have it. I'll paraphrase. But basically, he said, if I'm heading to work on a Monday morning and see a license plate that says I'd rather be golfing, do I seriously think the government wants me to go golfing? Was sort of the crux of it. And I think that was a useful analogy.
To his credit, if he's going to make the argument on First Amendment grounds, I'm okay with that. And again, I don't know how I feel about this. I'm curious to see how it plays out, right? But my concern is what's motivating this being done is nothing more than pure politics, which is the membership of the court has changed. So let's get every precedent we don't like out of the way, including Roe versus Wade, a 52-year precedent.
See, I think that's unfair. I think you're attributing motivation.
You might be right. You may very well be right. I'm not saying that I'm 100%. I'm just concerned that that's the real, people can, if an athlete says it's not about the money, you know why? It's about the money. If they're claiming that we're doing this because this really needs to be adjudicated, fine, but don't lie to me. You're doing it because the membership of the court has changed. That's all I'm saying. That's what I'm concerned about. At least.
Yeah. So Peter and I were brainstorming on what would be censorable, right? So if you saw, for example, John, FBLM, would you censor that?
So that the F would stand for what I believe it to stand for, and BLM is Black Lives Matter, right? Mm-hmm. If that's the deduction, but what if a tech nerd like you, I'm sure there's an FBLM acronym and
pounds something leader,
right,
leader moles. Yeah.
That's part of the reason that I tend to agree with Curtis Watley in this case, because what if he just claimed, if he hadn't been so damn honest, he probably still have the license plate, but I suppose he wanted this to be the fight.
Well, right? Once it was the fight,
he could have just said, this was,
file
fun. Transfer
protocols.
Exactly. How would you feel about FBLM?
Well, I think if you're going to censor, I think there might be enough people who think, as a populace that is worth censoring. But
isn't that what elections are for, right?
Yeah.
The Supreme Court.
But I think I would probably permit it on free speech grounds. It's just letters, right? Like, and once again, this is this whole notion that offense gives you so much leverage, right?
Microaggressions. It's not the same thing as being punched in the face.
Yeah. What if you saw Hitler won? Hitler won. Like, would you permit that?
But again, where you come up to it is, what if it's KKK or Nazis or again, you can see me wrestling with this in my own mind, because I understand there's certain things that I think everyone agrees, like the N-word should not be allowed, and Adolf is great. And, it's funny how Adolf Hitler, the name Adolf, is no longer acceptable just because of Adolf Hitler. It's kind of like his mustache, like he ruined it. I think that at the end of the day, if the state is issuing the license plate, it is state or government by extension, because it does. If this was a big deal, you could buy a national license plate, right? Or even then. But Virginia has a different license plate than Pennsylvania has a different license plate than Wisconsin. And, the Supreme Court, to their credit, has basically said, look, what is pornographic? You know it when you see it. That's that famous line by Potter Stewart. How do you know what's pornographic? You know it when you see it. And they have basically let it be decided by local control, right? Meaning what is considered pornographic in New York City is going to be 10 times worse or 10 times more graphic than what would per se be considered pornographic in Nebraska.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe this is one of these cases where having federalism work it through and work it out is probably the best solution, because I tend to be a First Amendment absolutist in all but a handful of cases. So I'm okay with FBLM, even though I might agree with the message or not agree with the message. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah. You remember our guest, Deprogramming Democrats? She's like, there's no hate speech exception in the First Amendment.
Yeah, there was a case of a guy, I forget the name. It was a family, and they had all, I mean, his kids all went to Harvard Law and so forth, and they would protest at military funerals and hold up signs that, God hates you and this is why you died. Do you remember that case? I forget what it was. The Westboro Church, I think it was.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And, it's one of these things that in a free and democratic society, you have to be able to make peace with assholes. And it's got to be real difficult for a military family who's seeing their loved one being married to hear this. And that might be the cost of democracy. It's terrible.
I did find a couple funny ones. I thought that were pulled by Wisconsin. I looked up what were actually spiked as license plates. You want to hear a couple?
Yeah.
So, I didn't do the, profane ones, but here's just a couple. ATF. They wouldn't let somebody just put ATF on their license plate, referring to a government institution. That's why.
Wait a minute. ATF. Say this again. They wouldn't let
just the letters, 3 letters. ATF. Well,
how did Virginia allow it in the first place then?
No, this is Wisconsin.
Oh, so this wouldn't even have been an issue if it was in Wisconsin.
I looked up in Wisconsin, so this probably would have been pulled in Wisconsin. They just don't take referring to government agencies.
And is there not some validity to that? Just having a blanket policy that basically says, look, we're not, no. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, someone else had government, so it fit the letter counts, and they didn't allow that. Another one they didn't allow was blazon, BLAYZNN, because it referred to drug use. This is local standards, right?
This is where it becomes silly, right? I mean, I didn't know that. How would I know that?
Yeah.
Right?
And Viagra, that also did not make the...
Really?
Yeah. I don't know why you would want to put Viagra on your license plate, but yeah.
But, it seems to me, and again, the issue with the First Amendment too, is it can't be content specific. And we were talking about that Westboro
viewpoint
Church.
Specific,
yeah, and content too. You can't endorse particular speech versus others, and there is no exception to that point of the hate speech. And this is the example. I looked up that case. I was trying to remember the exact name. It's Snyder versus Phelps. It was the Westboro Baptist Church, Snyder versus Phelps, and this fellow who was the one who started this thing. He protested at Marine Lance Corporal Matthew Snyder's funeral. The Supreme Court ruled 8-1 that the First Amendment protects public space protests with hateful or offensive speech. Like, you ready for this, Timmy?
Yeah.
Thank God for dead soldiers held during military funerals. I mean, awful, right?
Right.
But by the same token, it's like, but you know what's ironic? It was 8-1. Do you know who the one was?
Clarence Thomas.
Alito. No,
Samuel Alito.
So again, it seems to me that these classic, respect precedent, original thought, whatever, blah, he say what you want about Antonin Scalia. He was brilliant and he was consistent. I think Sam Alito is consistent as far as the wind blows. He's like J.D. Vance, like whatever gets me forward. And there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, he's brilliant. He deserved to be on the Supreme Court. I don't think he should remain on the Supreme Court. If he had any sense of shame, he would have resigned, but he didn't. And neither did Clinton. So if you want to say the same thing, go ahead. Yeah.
All right.
How would you rule? These facts are presented. And this is the thing I used to tell my students, because there's a very famous case, which I'll tell you about in a second. And I understand why they ruled this way. There was a case called Bowers versus Hardwick in 1986. I think it was in 1982 or 83. It was in the state of Georgia. The police broke in to ostensibly serve, I forget if it was Bowers or Hardwick, for a warrant, because the other one was the attorney general who he sued. Mm-hmm. And caught he and his homosexual lover in a consensual act of sodomy. And there was an anti-sodomy statute on the books in Georgia. And it went to the Supreme Court. And in 1986, in a case called Bowers versus Hardwick, they said, yeah, Georgia it was 5-4. But again, I understand why the 5, if you read the ruling, and this is the thing, the media distills it down to like the simplest details, and there's no sense of nuance and all these other things. I understand why Georgia won that case. But by the same token, politically, I don't agree with it, and they've since changed it. In 2003, there was a similar case called Lawrence versus Texas. They reversed themselves. So, I have to remember what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I'm happy they overturned that precedent, but am I happy because the law changed? No, right? And so that's why I get frustrated sometimes. But again, I'm not the person claiming that I'm absolutely, the originalist thought and blah, blah. Get out of here. You're so he's just a politician in a robe.
Okay.
Yeah. So how would you rule?
Well, I don't think
my original question.
I don't think it's government speech as I understand it. And then I think it comes down to First Amendment grounds. And, I always want it, like you say, the local, local control. I'm always a fan of federalism. So if they left it in a way that Virginia, could or couldn't decide, might be the
So you'd
best.
be comfortable kicking the can, basically.
Yeah.
We're not going to decide this.
Yeah. So.
And I think that would probably be the best. But by the same token, it's going to continue to come up as to what amounts to government speech. And because it's a government issued ID, basically, for lack of a better term, I can see how the state can win. But by the same token, I can wrap myself around on the First Amendment issue. Maybe
let's think about the economics of this. How much do you think Virginia has spent already in this court case?
Oh, I mean, it's around. I've never been a big believer in that. Like, President Trump, I will always go to bat. They went after President Bush during the Iraq War that he's always flying back to Crawford, Texas. He's the president of the United States. He's president whether he's in Crawford, Texas, and if he makes better decisions because he's on his ranch in Texas. I don't think he made very many good decisions, but I'm okay with that. I don't care if Trump goes back to Bedminster or Mar-a-Lago. As much as he's out of the Oval Office is fine by me.
But what I'm saying is, like, it's kind of like when the whole class, when someone in the class acts up and you guys are all suffering. Like, if I was a state and I had to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to defend this stuff in the Supreme Court, I would look at the balance sheet and say, how much am I making off of these? Or everybody just gets XYZ 1, 2, 3. Like, it may not be worth it in the long run for states to allow this if this is what they get into. Like,
maybe just have a blanket policy. They get rid of vanity plates, though. Then, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Right? Like that may be the simpler solution. You're in Wyoming or Rhode Island. You're just like,
But the reason they're not going to is the answer to everything, which is money. They make money off of these
things.
But
But I don't know if it's a net. If you look at the cost of this, I don't know.
Oh, you're saying they made $1 million times 10, so there's $10 million, and it's probably going to cost a heck of a lot more to defend this lawsuit.
Yeah, right? That's what I'm wondering. Okay. I'm wondering if it's actually worth it.
If you're going to look at it from that perspective, yeah, I worry that the motivation for taking this case ultimately is going to be that the membership of the court has changed. Yeah. I hope I'm proven wrong. That being said, even if they do reverse precedent, and this isn't really a binding precedent because that dealt with a particular area of groups and so forth, I'm okay either way. I'm really kind of torn on this. I don't know.
Yeah, it will be interesting.
I tend to be a First Amendment person. I also tend to believe it is government speech because it's a government issued license.
Right.
That's just how I see it in that simplest terms.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's that facilitated speech category I made up. Yeah.
No, but I think that's relevant too in today's 2026 environment because what liability does, for instance, Meta or Instagram or any of these people have if somebody goes on there and causes a riot or says, gunman in X, Y, and Z spot? What's their liability? Where does that line cross?
And in that case, it's not just amplifying it; it's how much they amplify it and to whom they spread.
By the algorithms, right? Because their very business nature
that's a
is
whole
to amplify.
Other, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Well, Timmy, do you have a whack job this week? Because I got a pretty good hero.
Yeah, I got an intro, and this is a story which I just came across. You guys may have seen this in the news. There was a flight out of Victoria, Canada. Basically what was happening is the plane pulled away from the gate. A toddler would not sit down and buckle their seatbelt. So they tried for a little while. They went back to the gate, extended one of those jetways, tried to get the toddler and the parents off. By the time that happened, the runway had closed in the airport for the night and everybody got rebooked on different flights. So I'm not going to single out these particular parents, but I'm going to single out a society and a gentle parenting movement, which has rendered us completely inept at handling our children. Make them do it. It's a toddler. So I have at least two solutions right away. Number one, hold them down, zip ties. Done. Number 2, have the parents sign a waiver that says, we don't care if Johnny bounces around and gets a few scars of learning and take off on the plane anyways, right? This is, I know you have big feelings, but everybody else is waiting to take off in the plane. No, it's a kid. Make him do it.
25 years ago, I got to see Fareed Zakaria. We're going to be talking about his article next week.
Mm-hmm.
I got to see him in person, and he was talking about the difference between parent rendering and India, where he's from, in New York. And he said he pulled up to this prestigious school in Manhattan where his kids go to school. And there's a parent saying that Johnny doesn't like mathematics. And he said this story, and I remember it vividly because he said he pulled away and he was laughing, thinking to myself, this is not an issue. Like in India, they'd be like, oh, Johnny doesn't like mathematics. That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. He doesn't have to like mathematics. He has to learn it.
Yes.
It's that simple. My favorite line, I use this a lot with my kids, is, I don't want to do that. That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing your opinion. I didn't ask.
Yeah.
No.
It's, like I say, I don't want to, call out anybody by name, but it's this whole movement where we're just completely immobilized in handling
the 6-year-old has as many rights as the 60-year-old.
Yeah.
No,
no,
that's the beauty. Again, it applies in the law, No, it's that simple.
Yeah. Just hold them down, a couple of zip ties, some screaming, and you're off on time.
Put duct tape on his mouth.
Yeah. They do that for unruly passengers in midair. They duct tape them. Like, I'm fine with that.
But yeah, me too. So, Timmy, I had a great whack job, and I'll save it for next week. And one of my favorite lines was by Ronald Reagan. And it was when Gary Hart got caught in 1984 and having an affair with Donna Rice. Remember that? Mm-hmm. That was a big deal. And he said something along the lines of, event, dear friends, events. And that's what makes a president, because no one can predict what's going to happen tomorrow, much less a president, right? Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure George Bush, who ran on privatizing Social Security, people forget this, in 2000, was not prepared for September 11, 2001, going back to my earlier point, right? Mm-hmm. So, Obama, I'm sure, wasn't prepared for the financial crisis or wasn't campaigning on it. You have to sort of address, and that's where I think a president is made, is based on how do you react when the chips are down and things are not going as planned. To that end, today, my hero is my wife. We had a soccer tournament this morning for my middle daughter, Elizabeth. She had an 8:30 game, which, of course, I slept through because I am not a morning person. She had one at like 11 and then another one at 1. Well, on the way home, she calls me and says, hey, I'm going to order some sandwiches from Wawa. Wawa is the local sort of convenience store. Mm-hmm. You probably we have Sheetz here. We have 7-Eleven. Mm-hmm. We have Quick Check. What's your one up there? There's a famous convenience store in Wisconsin.
We have Quick Trips and 7-Elevens.
Yeah, Quick Trip. Yeah, that's the other one. Yeah. Not Quick Check. We have Quick Check in New Jersey. Yeah. Anyhow, she calls me, and after she picks up her sandwiches, and I was out exercising because we went in separate cars, and she said, I'm sorry I'm going to be late with your sandwich. I just performed CPR.
Oh.
She walked in, saw a guy on the floor. He had no pulse. He was not breathing. He was as pale as a ghost. She said she jumped in, she did CPR, and she brought him back.
Oh, my goodness.
And it's just a reminder. And, there's no question. I texted my brothers, and my brothers both said, hey, Beef, my nickname's Beef. You definitely married up. And I said, no shit. But I'm going to embarrass my wife. And I called her parents and told them. And I called my parents and told them, because she never will. And I'm sure you're the exact same way. But she saved a life today. How many people can say that?
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
My wife, Kate, is my hero. She's my hero every day, but particularly this week. So well done, lady.
Yeah. We'll put a link, people can learn. There's hands-only CPR. People can go to their own Red Cross, learn how to do this. So you can, potentially save a life too. So.
And Timmy, by the way, I've understood since I was a lifeguard, it was 15 compressions, 2 breaths. Now the emphasis is on CAB, right? Compressions first, because they found the blood flow, right? And it's like 30 to 1 or 30 to 2 now or something, right?
Yeah, no, honestly, every 2 years they seem to change it when I go back, but it's a lot more compressions now.
It's like 30, right?
Yeah.
For every, yeah. Luckily she didn't have to, she gave him a couple and he came back apparently.
Wow.
But literally at 3:00 this afternoon. So I thought, I have a hero. It's going to be my wife.
Absolutely.
So, I'm proud of her. So.
Yeah.
And the irony is we've been married too long because we're grilling steaks tonight. And she said, I'm going to run to the grocery store and get corn. I said, well, you get some flowers while you're there. Because I was going to get you flowers. And she said, well, I'm not buying flowers for myself. I said, okay, I'm going to go over then. Why don't you just save a step? And I told her she has to spend at least $24 or above. I said, if you do not, I'm going back. So just to save a step, like we've been together almost 20 years, buy yourself flowers. It's from me.
Buy yourself something nice.
But you understand, right? You're going to the grocery store. Just save a step, The romance, right?
Yep.
Well, Timmy, I'm curious to see if the Supreme Court A takes this case and B what happens, because I to be honest with you, even knowing the facts of this case, I'd be happy with either outcome. I really would. Yeah. So, and that's rare. But listen, thanks everybody for continuing to listen. This is John Bolin signing off, saying, hey, misbehave, drive fast, take chances.
This is Tim saying, if everybody likes what you're doing, you're not this guy who just made his license plate, and you're probably not doing anything worthwhile.
You certainly aren't the person who reported it anonymously.
No.
Put some skin in the game. Put your name behind it.
Put your name behind it.
Yeah.
Let's
All right, Timmy. Talk next week. See you, buddy.